We are on the road to producing a race of men too modest to believe in the multiplication table. We are in danger of seeing philosophers who doubt the laws of gravity as mere fancies of their own. Catholic philosopher G.K. Chesterton wrote those words about a century ago, but they're turning out to be prophetic. Our modern age seems to pride itself on doubting as much as it possibly can, including those things that any other period of time would have seen as obvious, would have seen as basic common sense. Consider this clip of prominent atheist YouTuber Alex O'Connor discussing and half defending a view called mere logical nihilism. The idea that any kind of real distinction between things is an illusion, that there is not really a distinction between anything at all.
A chair begins to exist from pre-existing material. And yes, although it makes sense to say the chair exists now and didn't exist an hour ago, what we really mean is that the material that the chair is made out of has rearranged itself or been rearranged in such a way that we now arbitrarily give it the label of a chair, but nothing has actually begun to exist. If the only thing that makes the car and the fork, since it's all just the arrangement of the same kind of stuff, is the name that I give to it, that means there is no real difference between a fork and a car and this microphone and my hand or anything, any kind of object in the universe. Instead, what we have is one big lump of stuff that we just sort of arrange in different ways, or maybe nature arranges it for us and our minds put a box around it and give it a label. This is mereological nihilism.
This position is gaining traction on the internet, and that should really make us think about its implications. If mere logical nihilism is true, then everything that exists is just one thing. You and I are the same as each other, and as a chair, and as the Eiffel Tower, and as a cow, we're all just one thing. And if that's the case, you and I don't really exist as separate things. We're all just one thing. But that is so contrary to common experience, not to mention common sense, to the sense that all of us have that we're our own separate beings, that you are different from me and that I'm different from you, that I control my thoughts but not your thoughts and not the thoughts of all other people, to the sense that we have that other people really are different people, not just extensions of ourselves. I mean, if you went up to some random guy in the street and explained this view to him, explain the idea that since we're all made up of the same basic particles, we all must be the same basic thing, he would say that sounds so silly that only a philosopher could believe it. And honestly, I think that guy would be onto something. Philosophers have become known for digging themselves into weird beliefs. It's no surprise that the same G.K. Chesterton, who I quoted earlier, warned that there is a peril in the human intellect being free to destroy itself. Philosophy is a beautiful thing, but a beautiful thing can sometimes also be a dangerous thing. Good philosophy exists to do the opposite of what modern philosophers use it for. It exists to explain our experience of the world, not doubt it into non-existence. It is precisely because mere logical nihilism is so contrary to common sense that it can't be believed. St. Thomas Aquinas argued that there were certain first principles that no person could deny without subverting the entire domain of logic. These self-evident principles included things like the laws of logic, the existence of the self, the existence of change, the existence of free will, and yes, a distinction between me and you and the Eiffel Tower. Mere illogical nihilism and other kinds of extreme skepticism try to place doubt on these self-evident principles and risk undermining all of human experience as a result. There is a limit to how much of our experience we can doubt while still maintaining our sanity. And philosophy is supposed to be the ultimate ally of sanity, not its enemy. So what happened? How did philosophy turn from a tool of learning about the world to a tool for doubting every little principle of common sense? Obviously, long, complex historical changes require long, complex answers, but if I had to pin the guilt on any one person in any one time and place, it would have to be the 17th century philosopher René Descartes. You see, Descartes famously argued that any true knowledge must have, quote, a certainty equal to that given by arithmetical and geometrical demonstrations. In other words, if we're going to know something's true, if we're going to have knowledge, but we don't have that kind of level of certainty that comes with math demonstrations, we don't really have knowledge. But this opens up a Pandora's box. After all, how many things do we really have absolute mathematical certainty about? Well, math, other kinds of deductive reasoning, And that's kind of it. We certainly don't have an absolute mathematical certainty about seemingly self-evident things like the existence of other minds or a distinction between me, you, and the Eiffel Tower. So does that mean that these apparently undeniable things actually can be denied? And it seems like that would be something that Descartes would have to say. But I think that's where he and other modern philosophers go wrong. Like I said earlier, philosophy exists to explain what we're seeing about the world, not to destroy it. But Descartes' philosophy says that we can't even believe our five senses give us a correct picture of reality. This is an untenable position. The only answer is how we can avoid it. Here, I turn to the Christian philosophical tradition, to St. Augustine and his notion of faith. You see, when St. Augustine was younger, he was a lot like Descartes. In his Confessions, Augustine writes that he once wanted to have complete, absolute mathematical certainty about everything he believed. He wanted, he said, quote, to be as certain of things unseen as that 7 and 3 make 10. In other words, he wanted to be as certain about everything as he was that 7 plus 3 equals 10. He wanted absolute mathematical certainty about every little thing he believed. But as Augustine got older and began the process of converting to Christianity, he realized something. We can't expect absolute mathematical certainty about everything and still live a normal life. If you try to have absolute certainty in a decision before you make it, you'll never make a decision. If you try to have absolute certainty in your beliefs before believing them, you'll never believe anything. Literally anything. And as nice as absolute certainty might be, that's too high a price to pay. Instead, the conclusion Augustine came to is this. On many, many beliefs, it's okay to have a kind of practical certainty. Could it be the case that mere logical nihilism is true? Maybe, but then life would become unlivable. Is there any possibility that your wife might be a Russian spy? Again, maybe, but some possibilities are so microscopic that you don't even have to consider them. They become rationally non-existent. And could it be the case for Augustine that Christianity is false? Maybe that's logically possible, so there's always a chance. But it's a chance so small that we can really look at the truths of Christianity as we would substantial knowledge. This trust in those things which are almost certain is a kind of faith for Augustine. We don't know that they're true with mathematical certainty, but with almost everything we believe, we have to believe it with slightly less than mathematical certainty. And that's okay. Man was made for knowledge, not certainty. We can't doubt everything without losing touch with common human sense. So instead of doubting everything, let's maintain a kind of basic faith that our senses aren't deceiving us, most of the time, preserving both our sanity and the possibility of rational thinking in the process. And thank you for watching this video. If you could please like this video if you did like it, and subscribe to this channel if you did like it, then that would be awesome and it would help us grow as a channel. That would be great. Thank you. God bless.